The Assassination of Braeburn by the Coward Dirty Rich. Written by Don't Fade. The door creaked open, expelling the scent of freshly baked pies into the evening air. A little, pale, yellow filly peered up at me, unafraid and curious. "Can I help you with something, mister?" she squeaked, her high-pitched voice not mixing well with the country accent. I smiled as warmly as I could, standing as I was in the brisk shadows cast by sunset. Part of me wanted to push straight past the filly and into the toasty house. But if the legends were to be believed, such an action could very well spell my doom. "I'm here to meet with Miss Applejack." Immediately, her eyes lowered halfway. "Oh," she said in a bored tone. "Probably some business associate, ain't you?" "Not quite. I'm an independent investigator attempting to—" "I don't need your gibberish. Hold up a moment, and I'll get my sis." The filly rolled her eyes and stepped back inside, closing the door. I adjusted my suit, somewhat offended at being treated so rudely. Of course, all it took was a distant baaing of some sheep to remind me where I was. I decided to relax my standard, if only for an evening. These ponies weren't the first of their kind I had spoken to in recent days, but hopefully they would be the last. Everything I found pointed me here, to a mare named Applejack. Maybe she could finally give me the full story. The door opened once more, this time revealing a mare the same height as me. She had a slightly dirty-looking orange coat, and her blonde mane was tied back, both signs of a hard-working pony. Her eyebrows rose at my suit. I don't do business after dark, especially not with strangers." I shook my head. "I'm not a business pony. Learning from my mistake before, I kept things simple. I'm looking for the truth." "Truth, huh?" She chuckled. "Well, you came to the right place, didn't you? You're looking at the element of honesty." Her mirth faded quickly enough, and she tossed a suspicious glance my way. "What kind of truth are you looking for?" The tension in my mind was as palpable as I answered her. "What happened to Sheriff Braeburn 2 years ago?" She gave me a hard, appraising look, and for a moment I thought she was going to slam the door in my face. But then, to my extreme relief, she sighed and stepped to one side. "You'd better come inside." I silently followed her into the house. The entry hallway was short with 2 doors on either side. She pushed through the first one on the left and brought me to a family dining room. A round table with a checkered tablecloth sat in the center of the room, with 7 chairs gathered around it. Only one of them was occupied, however, and it was by the same filly who greeted me a few minutes before. "Applebloom, huh? Why don't you go finish your homework upstairs?" Applejack asked kindly, but I could see it really wasn't debatable. Applebloom gave her sister a frown, and an exchange took place that I was not privy to. After a few moments, the filly sighed and snatched her school bag from beneath the table, packing her things away quickly. "Fine, but you better tell him what's going on later." Later, being when I left, I assumed. The The awkwardness of being amongst a family of strangers was not lost on me, but I persevered. The answers were so close, I could feel them. As the younger sister left the room, and Applejack began getting something out of the cupboard in the adjacent kitchen, I looked around. It seemed like a fairly standard homestead, at least from what I knew. Every piece of furniture was worn but loved, and various instances of do-it-yourself repairs were visible, from even the uneven sanding of the chair legs to the plastered wall barely concealing little cracks. The only thing that made me double-take was the rifle mounted above the doorway. I didn't even notice it at first, situated as it was directly above the door. It was an Earth Pony model, with all the parts, including the barrel, made bigger to accommodate hooves. I'd seen unicorn guns 3 times smaller than the one on the wall, but for some reason I didn't feel like insulting it. There was a little gold-plated inscription below it, but it was too high for me to read.
It says, remember the red rule,
said Applejack through gritted teeth as she carried a tray into the room. Just a little harmless thing. It was too late to pretend that I hadn't been looking, so I gave an uninterested yet non-committal grunt in response. When I looked at what was on the tray, a flicker of excitement shot through my veins. 2 mugs and a big bottle of adult cider. This was it. I was finally going to learn what happened. She waved for me to take a seat and started pouring the drink. I want you to understand something first. I nodded. We country folk have always dealt with our problems on our own way. We don't see the point of getting other ponies involved if we can fix it ourselves, you hear? I nodded again. So no matter what you think of us right now, you gotta keep that in mind. We're simple folk, and we'll find simple solutions. Applejack slid a mug over to me and sat herself on the opposite side of the table. I took a polite sip, which turned into a gulp as the flavor washed over my taste buds. This is very good cider, I stated obviously, tossing the mare an appreciative smile. If you're hoping to loosen my tongue with flattery, don't bother. I'll tell you whatever you want to know, but I'll do it my way. She took a long drink from a mug. Right. Okay, Braeburn. 2 years ago. What do you want to know? I sipped at the cider to steady my nerves. Why was he the sheriff? Y'all never met him, did you? I shook my head, and she did the same, only sadly. Shame about that. You know if you met him, kindness and structure and brains all rolled into one stallion he was. You know he never asked for the job? I didn't know that. Yep. The townsfolk made him to do it because he was perfect. Sure enough, he had Appaloosa and top-notch shake quicker than you can say, buy some apples! We were so proud. Sounds like a lot of responsibility for one pony, I said with a frown. The mare leaned forward, gesturing enthusiastically with a free hoof. That's the thing about Bray, though. He didn't see it like that. In his eyes, the whole town was his home, and he was doing just little self-repairs while he was being sheriff. That sounded familiar. It wasn't clear if Applejack realized that she shared that trait with Braeburn, but I decided not to bring it up lest she change her mind about answering my questions. So he loved the town, and the town loved him back. I lowered my voice. What went wrong? Dirty Rich. She spat the name like sour gum, and the corners of her mouth wrinkled in contempt. I said nothing, waiting for her to continue. My mug sat forgotten on the table. You might have heard of his brother, Filthy. Lives in Ponyville, does business with us. Friendly fella, not dirty though. No, sir. He was as foul as the apple that never falls, rotten to the core. He saw what a nice little life his brother carved out over here and got jealous. The farm pony slammed her hoof on the table. Imagine that! Jealous of his own flesh and blood! Despicable, I agreed quietly. So Dirty Rich came to Appaloosa one day, bringing all sorts of bad ponies with him. Real scum-of-the-earth types, you know. The kind of ponies who spend their days in the alleys, preying on the good folk. Suddenly, a proud look crossed Applejack's face. But my cousin was on top of them the second they arrived. He knew who Dirty was and what kind of ponies he traveled with. Brace marched straight up to them unarmed in broad daylight, the town watching, and said to him, "This here's a peaceful town. If y'all can swear you're up to no good, I'll let you stay. If not, then I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." I whistled appreciatively. That would have taken guts. No kidding, chuckled Applejack. Bring yourself some more cider. But that was Brae in a nutshell. Guts, and lots of them. Is that how it happened? Did they... I started to ask, but she was already shaking her head. Nope. They did something worse. Dirty looked him in the eye, unblinking, and said,
We're just travelers looking for a home, sir. Not a single troublemaker among us.
Her hooves tightened around the mug, and she glared into it. They lied straight to his face. There wasn't anything I could say to that. Clearly, the idea of lying was almost a personal insult to her. The element of honesty. I made a mental note to watch what I said. Honesty in this family was tradition long before I came along. The Apple family doesn't lie. Never has, never will. And y'all better believe it's the truth. I quickly nodded and took another polite sip of the cider. Not even the flavor could distract me from the intensity in the green eyes, though. So what did Sheriff Braeburn do? I asked in an attempt to divert attention. Applejack sighed and scratched the back of her neck. I don't like this part. You must understand, we're trustworthy ponies. And we always expect everyone else to be the same. Braeburn, well, he believed him. Took Dirty at his word and let him come into town. Dear, I said quietly. She nodded gravely. Yep. First mistake he ever made as sheriff was letting those shady folk inside. Ain't nobody gonna disagree with that. After a moment of silence, I couldn't help but ask, why did Dirty go to Appaloosa? Kinda peculiar, ain't it? He and his brother were really more city folk. But I thought it over after it was so said and done, and I think I know why. I leaned forward and rested my hooves on the table, and she did the same, hugging her mug. His brother Filthy got his big rich when he helped start Ponyville, way back before you and me were born. He got in early and made a fortune to our apples. But Dirty missed out. So for all these years he's been traveling, looking for his own breakthrough. Appaloosa, I blurted out excitedly. Applejack nodded. Darn straight. He saw the little town getting bigger and wanted to get on it before it was too late. Must have thought his luck had finally turned or something. But the thing is, he didn't have the brains or the patience in his brother. He didn't know what to do with the opportunity when he had it, like when my dog, Manona, changes to mail me. And that's when things got ugly. Almost. It wasn't a sudden thing. It took a good few months before I got desperate though. I noticed my mug was empty somehow, and Applejack slid the bottle over to me. As I poured, a thought occurred. Wouldn't Sheriff Braeburn notice Dirty and his gang getting worse? The farm pony nodded again as I set the bottle back on the table. Oh, he noticed alright. But that was during the Great Derailment, and he was too busy trying to keep trade flowing without the trains to bother with some pesky little gang. But they didn't stay little for long, did they? You're darn right they didn't. Without my cousin constantly squashing them back in the dirt like the bugs they were, they got bigger, more dangerous. By the time the trains were fixed and Bray could finally turn his minds back into town, they were too big to handle on his own. I knew this part myself. He tried, anyway, as it saw. Applejack smiled sadly. That he did. That silly pony was too brave for his good. Do you know what happened? Every description I found before was vague. I needed to know. No. It was in the middle of Dirty's latest spree, screaming through town and robbing good folks and ponies of their bits. The lying bastard was sitting in a bar drinking while his gang trashed the place. The good ponies ran and told Braeburn, and he realized his mistake. The blonde-maned bear shook her head almost disapprovingly. I don't know what rightly possessed my cousin to strap on his gun and march straight to the bar, but it wasn't common sense, let me tell you that. Her voice was angry, but a tear rolled down her cheek. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be. My cousin died a hero, 1,000 times nobler than any stallion in Camelot. Applejack panted, and I looked down so I couldn't see her eyes. But it still hurts. Damn. But it does. It went again every urge in the irrational part of my mind. But it was necessary. You don't have to tell me the rest if you don't want to. I will. It's just tough is all. Take as long as you need. I'm in no rush. It was true. No pony expected me back for weeks. How about I ask you a question? It might help me relax. I spread my hooves to either side. Shoot. Why are you asking about this? I knew somebody wanted to know the whole story sooner or later, but what's your reason? I'm an independent investigator. I only heard the story a few months ago from a stallion in a bar. It got stuck in my mind and I decided to see if there's any truth to it. So, you're not a law pony? I chuckled. Not a chance. I just like to get to the bottom of things. She raised an eyebrow, then shrugged. Every pony is a hobby, I suppose. Taking a deep breath, the farm pony scrubbed her ass. Alright, I think I can do it now. Alright. So Bray marched into the bar and went out to Dirty and told him, You lied to me, Dirty Rich. Now how about y'all step outside and we'll settle this like stallions. Hot damn, I breathed. Did he really challenge Dirty in front of his whole gang? You're damn right he did. Dirty wasn't about to refuse, not in front of his buddies. But he also knew he would lose if he faced my cousin with honor. So he shot Bray in the back as he led me outside, putting another 2 bullets into the Bray full as he fell. Applejack wasn't crying anymore. She was scowling. The coward jumped into the table and shouted, "This is my town now. We're in charge." My blood was thundering to my veins. I had never felt so much anger in my life, and I had never even met Braeburn. I could only imagine what Applejack must have felt. And they were right. Without the sheriff, the town didn't know how to handle the gang. His deputies were just regular ponies. They weren't made for fighting. So everybody just tried to buckle down and board up when Dirty hit the streets. They were pretty much imprisoned in their own homes. Can you believe it? Sounds terrifying. No kidding. I was afraid when I heard the news, and I didn't even live there. Dirty and his crew had complete control of Appaloosa. There wasn't a single pony there that could stop them. They robbed the banks, trashed the houses, and ripped out everything Braeburn had worked for. I think that was why Dirty liked it so much. He really hated Bray. Always saw him as the only thing preventing him from being successful. So with my cousin dead, there was no pony left in his way. I took a large swallow from my mug to wash away the horrible images. But I've been to Appaloosa. I was there a few weeks ago. Everything was in good shape, and it's one of the busiest trade stops out there. Applejack drained the last of the cider. Now, this is the part of why I'm glad you're not a law pony. You remember what I told you about how us country folk like fixing our own problems? I nodded. Well, the second we got the news, me and my brother Big Mac knew what we had to do. We sent letters all across Equestria to every apple we remembered. She leaned forward once more. And that's a lot of apples. What did the letters say? I asked. I still have a copy of one. She reached into her mane and withdrew a small piece of paper, offering it to me. I'll keep it with me, so I never forget. I took the note and unfolded it. The writing was uneven, as Earth Pony notes often were, but it was still legible. Dirty Rich in Appaloosa has forgotten the red rule. Applejack continued before I could ask what it meant. Because you see, we apples have a special kind of bond. Ain't nothing special, but it's just as powerful. If you take one of us from the tree, the rest of us will come down your head. Simple as that. A chill ran down my spine as I realized what she meant. So we hired a couple of farm helpers to keep this place running, packed up a few things, and caught the next train to Appaloosa. Me and Mac hid in the town for 2 full weeks until the last apple arrived. The townsfolk knew it was coming, and they let us all hide with them. Finally, we were all there, and it was time to fix Appaloosa. The mayor's green eyes focused on me intently as she began to recount the day. It was near dawn, just before the sun came out fully. I was with Mac on the second story of a shop just across from the bar that Dirty had been drinking in all night. The same damn bar where he gunned down Bray. About 25 apples were at the windows of buildings on our side of the street, and another 25 were in the ones opposite us. She reached across the table and pulled the bottle back, refilling her mug without breaking eye contact. Dirty and his gang swaggered out just as the sun cleared the horizon. They were laughing and hooting and talking about how they were going to burn down Bray's old house. I think that's what did it. The next thing I knew, I was pulling the trigger faster than my rifle could fire. Tore Dirty's ear off in the first shot. He never thought a stallion could scream that high. Mac fired next. Put her round clean through the last back legs. Both of them. Then that was it. The floodgates opened, and every apple was firing down those bastards. Couldn't even see after the first minute. It was just a big, red dust cloud. Dirty's head rolled out of its suit enough, and I personally put a shot straight through it. Burst like a rotten pumpkin it did. I felt sick, but she wasn't done. When the dust cleared, every one of them was dead. I honestly couldn't tell which one was dirty. There just wasn't enough left. She sipped from a mug. After that, not a single pony spoke. I looked at Mac and he just nodded at me, slung his rifle over his back, went downstairs. I did likewise. So did every apple. We just went our separate ways, by train or carriage. I was almost speechless. The truth was far more brutal than I imagined, but I found myself agreeing with this mayor's idea of country justice. They had a problem, and they fixed it themselves. End of story. So, does anyone else know the truth besides me? Applejack nodded. You're the first I've told, but word got around from the citizen who helped us. No law ponies ever bought any apples for 2 years though, so I think we'll be fine. She smirked and placed her mug down. You'll be fine too, just as long as you remember the red rule. And what is the red rule? I finally asked. The farm pony's expression hardened, and she looked me dead in the eyes. Don't fuck with the Apple family.